Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Confluential Live. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host today, and I'm excited to be joined by Adam Cheatham. Happy Friday or Saturday, depending on where you're joining us from. But we're very happy you're here. This is our weekly live, super informal, where we kind of talk about trends that we're seeing in our actual client work in the marketplace, as opposed to kind of those hype trends. What are we really seeing businesses do with their enterprise systems? And today we're going to kind of tackle the big elephant in the room on big software. Big software has a lot of funds, a lot of money, a lot of muscle that they put behind convincing businesses to buy their products. But what we're seeing, as the more specialized the business marketplace becomes, the more challenging it is for these kind of big bang type purchases or implementation. So that's really what we're going to tackle today. As always, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. It's not just our experience that's important to share, but your experience in the marketplace as well. So I invite you to put wherever you're joining us from. All of the comments aggregate here. We can see them, we pull them up on the screen, and we're able to kind of talk about it as a community. So you can follow us on all of our channels at The Confluential, cross-platform. You can follow Adam and myself for these weekly conversations. We try and get to them once a week. We usually do. I'll give us credit on that. But it is something that, we have to balance between all of the clients we're supporting as well. But we're super pumped to be here today. So let's kind of get into it. If you could, audience, go ahead and drop where you're joining from in the chat. We always love to see kind of where we have our audience tuning in from. And I will let Adam just do a quick introduction for himself and the Confluential, and then we'll kind of get into what we're talking about today.
Yeah, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from, and whenever you're listening, because we also have these reposted for you to listen whenever you like. But my name is Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of the Confluential. Very excited about this topic today, particularly because I've worked in the past with that assumption we need a new ERP, and it's kind of a begrudgingly we need a new ERP. Nobody really wants to implement an ERP. They just kind of feel like they have to. And then once you get into the conversation, it's really hard to see the forest through the trees, if you will, once you've kind of decided on that. So talking today about the things that may not be big box ERP and might be smaller box ERP too, right? So there are a lot of more tier 2 packages that some folks figure I need tier 1. I just had to assume that that's the case. And there is a whole lot more fit for purpose software out there, even if you do have to go with a larger software package. But we always like to encourage the idea of things like IT operations. How do you get better at delivering against the software that you own already? No, it's really difficult to really bite the bullet on SaaS-based software in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on an on-premise package, there are a number of ways that you can continue to support that on your own, and giving up that on-prem licensing it's a big leap. So think about this from the perspective of how can we get better with what we have. We always like to take that approach. In fact, we started talking to somebody this week who's we don't know what we need. We've got a really customized software package that's very much for our industry and for our company, and it works great. We just don't know if we need to move or not. We want to kind of answer that question, and where do we need to move, because there's so many different solutions in it. So some of the things that I'm hoping to touch on today are what can I do with what I already have, right? Sometimes getting better with an IT PMO, a change control board, an EPMO. We've done all those types of work for clients and helping them utilize their organization and their existing environments better. There are also conversations from a best of breed approach where you can start plugging and playing. That's always also a consideration, right? Working with the client right now where they just need a quality management system to manage a couple of key components of their business. And that's a great approach. Why buy a whole new ERP if you can buy a smaller system that fits a more targeted approach? So those are a couple of things. And then there's also the increase of AI in the space. It's
Mm-hmm.
only going to continue to accelerate, and how it is that fits in. So many alternatives to the big box software as we start peeling it apart. And then even if you do kind of figure out that you need to go wholesale, look, whatever I got in this environment, we need to just scrape it clean and start from scratch. That doesn't mean that we have to level the whole house um,
Exactly.
all at once and stand up another one next to it all at once. We can take this in a more modular approach, that more best of breed targeted way of looking at things. So I think that there's a lot of content in this for us to be able to cover. We're going to have a hard time getting to everything, but we want to hear questions from the audience as well. So
Yeah.
hope we can be useful today.
Okay. So let's kind of start at the beginning. If you are in a situation as an enterprise, as many people are, and I think healthy leaders do this all the time, the power of I don't know, right? You know,
Mhm.
I have no idea what I need. I'm not sure if we need a new software and that's the issue, or if I need to focus on these like IT PMO optimizing our current stack. Where do you start with that conversation to kind of figure out the best roadmap for you?
You start with where the problems are, right? What are we actually trying to do? What are we trying to solve, right? Because at the end of the day, a solution needs a problem for it to be effective. AI is no different. ERP is no different. What's our problem here? What are we actually having a hard time with? Is it because we just don't like it? If that's the answer, far be it from me to tell you that
Yeah.
you shouldn't have an ERP or the software environment that you like. Um, but liking something can get expensive really quick, right? And I've seen a lot of folks go down the path of implementing an ERP, NetSuite, SAP, or this, that, or the other because they like something about it, something
Hmm.
specific about it, and they aren't focusing on the fact that that software doesn't solve your problems,
Hmm.
or it creates more of them, right? So on one hand, it doesn't solve the problem, on the other hand, it creates more of them. And I think that there's a whole slew of ways of looking at things and approaching where is our problem? What are we trying to solve here? And then you can start asking, do we have ways of solving this now? Do
Hmm.
and how widespread is it, right? If all of my problems are in supply chain visibility, and it's just look, we have strategic goals to do a better job of sourcing, evaluating, and using our supply chain to bring raw materials to production. If
Hmm.
that's the biggest problem that we have, and everything else is kind of pain points in between their inconveniences, then why don't we just start with the supply chain software?
Hmm.
Why don't we start with cleaning
Hmm.
up our vendor scorecards, getting our sourcing appropriate, and connecting those dots so that we are targeted in one piece of it? Uh,
Hmm.
and there are ways that you can do that that's a bit more cost effective. It will also yield better results more quickly if you're
Yeah.
taking things one bite at a time. So that's where I like to start. Where's the
Mhm.
problem? And what are our biggest issues so that we can then figure out how to solve for them. And that might also
Yeah.
yield the idea of actually we can do this ourselves. And there's
Yeah.
nothing like that either.
Mm-mm, not at all. And that's where I'm going to go next before we kind of tackle the different types of software in the marketplace, what that looks like, how to navigate that. How do you look at those IT operations and say, you know what? I'm going to take a year, a hard year to look at like what we got going on internally. Even if you're going to buy new software, it's not a bad thing to say, hey, I'm going to, take a year to get us all ready for that and really optimize our processes and leadership here. What are the approaches that the modern business in 2025 needs to take to making sure they have operational excellence in IT?
Well, the first piece of that is a service mentality in your IT department, right? The working with a client right now where I've encouraged them to see this as two things. First of all, IT is the customer of the business, or the business is the customer of IT, right? The business should be telling IT what it is it needs. I've seen a lot of ERP implementations where IT comes in and says, "We need a new ERP." And the business says, "No, we don't." And they force it anyway. And that becomes problematic. Now, there are some cases where it's look, our security is bad. It puts the business at risk. And those are all technical reasons to implement a new ERP. Those are edge cases, though,
Mm-hmm.
in that scenario. So when we start thinking about what can we do instead or first, we should have a service mentality where IT serves the needs of the business. And then you should have a way that the business is able to say what it needs and wants so that IT can scope and resolve that, right? IT operations, IT PMO. Um, the idea that the business says, "I need this enhancement to this system." They are required to put in the rigor of understanding why we need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through the process of evaluating that against the priorities of other groups, the impacts on other groups, and then you go through the process of saying, "Here is my list." And
Mm-hmm.
then, just like a production facility, IT says, "I have a capacity, and so I can produce these things." So
Mm-hmm.
many folks out there are manufacturers, and they're great at it. And then you look at their IT department, and it's in tatters. It's like,
Yeah.
you have a skill set right here.
Mm-hmm.
You do this for a living. You just
Mm-hmm.
need to remember that IT produces software for you,
Mm-hmm.
and treat it like that. They have a capacity. You should schedule things. And just like you have a rush order from a customer who says, "I need this tomorrow," and you say, "All right, move it to the front of the line," you can do that in IT too, but you should have a line first, other than just who screams the loudest. So, the question here that Mick has, how do we use our current software better? Where should I start? Is with that structure and organization.
Yeah.
It can be more formal. It can be informal, depending on the organization. I've seen some organizations where IT does have that service mentality and they understand the needs of the business quite well. So when the business speaks business language, IT knows what they're talking about. But not all organizations have that benefit. And so having a bit more formalized structure where the business is able to convey what value they're seeking is a key piece of that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great question, just in the fact that if you want to use your current software better, that should be a strategic goal for you. You should always be trying to use your current software better, right? A lot of times we see legacy software systems just kind of thrown to the side because the business or the IT department wants a new solution or gets kind of that obsession with one of these specific solutions or features. So that's, even just asking that question is super, super healthy. So
And I,
before
I want to just pick at that for a second because there are two pieces. Um, Sometimes an executive comes in, and this is actually different than the question itself. It's more of an add on to the conversation. Sometimes an executive comes in and they say, "I want my own things. I've been told that I'm given the keys to the kingdom, and I'm going to remodel." Sometimes that's what it is, and that's a part of a strategic objective. But that's usually a part of a strategic conversation at that new level and say, "We're going to start new here, here, and here." That's fine. Now we know why, right? We have an objective, and the pain point that we have is more oriented towards a strategic need to innovate differently. That's fine. But what I hesitate to jump face first into on that is this could be, you're going to think of this as it's going to be an 18-month. You should assume it's going to be at least 18 months, right? I have a client who's been doing this for, I kid you not, 5 years,
Mhm,
and they've got at least two more. And they started thinking this was an 18-month project.
mhm,
They retooled baseline their entire project, thinking that, all right, if we just start it properly and get our feet set, we can leverage the work that we've had. And now it's an 18-month project from here. They are still not 18 months away from going live now. So there's the buying into this. It can be something that changes over quickly, may not be you. So I would just be cognizant that the idea that this is going to happen on a timeline, this happy path, isn't always a good assumption. And you should have a plan for maintaining your existing system while you're going through the rest of this. Because if you stop, assuming that the new one will rescue you, you will have more holes. And if you run into implementation problems, those holes will then become gaping wounds in your IT environment. You'll be like the Titanic, you go down fast.
So, assuming that the new software will rescue you, is what the billion-dollar software machine is built upon. That is their entire value statement, right? Our software will save you. And they've gotten more aggressive with saying that and saying that and saying that, especially as companies have started to say, I think I'm going to do something a little bit different, or I think I'm going to specialize in this area. With the AI boom, there's been even more of that. What would you say to a client that says, well, so and so vendor told me that this software is going to solve all of my problems. I need to spend 50 million on this implementation and just grind and buckle down for the next 2 years to become the company of the future.
I would simply say there are very few CFOs out there that see an ERP implementation as having an ROI greater than 0.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it still happens, right? There's ERP implementations all the time. So, there's some level that they must see value in those types of projects.
And how much of that is attributable directly to just the software, rather than the organizational change or the operational process change that you went through to get there, right? And that's the bigger question for me, is where does that value come from? And are software vendors taking credit for things that maybe they ought not to?
Yes, I'll answer that one. Absolutely.
So there's a bit of that. Now, does that mean that you can't get value from this?
Absolutely.
You certainly can. But does that mean that it's going to be the type of value that it is you're assuming is going to return, have a positive ROI on a $50 million investment that is at risk of becoming a $150 million assessment implementation? No.
Yeah.
So let's be careful with the assumptions that we're making here. Your business doesn't make money because of your software.
Yeah.
Your business makes money because of you and the way that you run it. And that's
some people. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, some people absolutely believe that, though. Like, that is a known thing in the marketplace, that if you don't invest in this business solution, whether it be an ERP system, an MES system, an AI system, whatever, right, then you will not be able to go on. And that is one thing that, the big software industry has really cracked into, that fear of anti-innovation, right? That they won't be able to carry that through. So that brings me to this question from Mick. And of course, Adam, if you see questions in here you want to answer, you let me know.
I like this one.
I like this one too. Would you rather stick with a monolithic ERP that guarantees stability but evolves slowly, or adopt modular systems that sorry, I'm blind here.
Let you experiment.
That let you experiment. It's hard getting old, you guys, with AI and automation, but could create volatility in your process.
I would rather have an IT environment that is allowed to evolve at the pace of business, which is a bit faster than slowly, right? So injecting new life into your system, I think, is a good thing. Now, sometimes you need a full blown heart transplant, and that's sometimes that's the case. But more often than not, building out your system in a way that you can say, here is the area I'm going to target next, is an approach I like better. It creates more bite-sized uh, programs that are created for more effective wins and things like that. So I think that that's something that I would rather I would rather go that way
Yeah.
than be stuck with just building the big monolithic system that I have.
Mhm.
But every industry is different too. That could be an industry specific thing. Um, Metals industries have gotten it right, and they've been doing it that way for decades. And so, it's not all brand new um, systems, whether they're targeted or big box, are really going to be able to handle that level of change. And that's okay. They do things well, and let's let them do things well. Sometimes that's the way that it is. But sometimes they end up on something that has been running for a bit too long. And software can degrade by itself, right? Like hardware can degrade by itself. So there are things in that space that are important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that the question is really the wrong question, right? And it's obviously we are consultants, but it's not so much of would you rather, it's what is best for your organization, right? Because maybe you are an organization that needs some sort of standardization that ERP brings, right? And an ERP investment is a good choice for you. I think the bigger piece of this is what have you done to assess that? And do you know kind of where your strategy is going with your business systems? But it's a question that kind of everyone should react to. So let's talk about the thing everyone's going to say to this before we move on. And maybe there's a question in here around it. I'll look while I ask you. But everyone's going to ask about integrations, right? If these modular based systems, you can call them modular, you can call them microservices, you can call them best of breed, you can call them interoperability, you can call them whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of these pain points are built around, does this system play well with others, which should be included in your selection criteria. But a lot of these are going to need integrations that are maintained, created, managed. Can you kind of speak to that
Yeah.
consideration?
Well, that's an important one, right? You have to create and maintain an API to integrate a lot of these software packages. That's a great point. The challenge isn't that you need to create that though. It's that if you buy it from a big box perspective, it's all that price is included. The cost of the API, the cost of the fact that it's all under one roof and all of those modules are integrated under one software package, that's included in the subscription fee. It's just different to see it separated out as something that needs to be maintained. And there are benefits both ways, right? Don't get me wrong on that. But the idea there is that you have to solve for that problem. There's a whole lot of additional costs in the idea that we are solving problems for you so that you don't have to figure them out on your own. And a lot of organizations out there have IT teams that are fully capable of solving their problems on their own. There are a lot of great middleware companies and software packages that do some pretty cool things. Boomi is a great example of a middleware package that can do quite a lot. And you can use that as an integration tool. MuleSoft is another good one. Those types of things where it's important to just remember that you can get those too, right? It's not a one-off. It's not an every time you have
Mhm.
a new system, you have a separate integration that needs to be maintained on a separate platform. There are different ways of doing it, and different API structures that allow for it. I think this
Absolutely.
this kind of touches a bit on a question that we had regarding a single source of truth in here?
Mhm.
Uh, do you think the idea of a single source of truth survives in a modular composable world? Absolutely.
Yeah.
A data warehouse is a great thing to think about, right? It's going to happen somewhere, and you can have problems with single source of truth in ERP as well, right? That doesn't mean that
Mhm.
it solves that problem. Solving for a single source of truth is something that you just need to do, no matter which approach you go for, and be able to maintain it. There are good master data management systems that help with
Mhm.
this. Good data warehouse approaches that help with this that should be considered for the whole program anyway. Um, especially if you start getting into an approach where, well, maybe I'll go ERP and then I just need to add on one system. Okay. What if your ERP is running on a Microsoft database and the system that you just added to it is operating on an Oracle database? Now your single source of truth concept is broken anyway, right? So just because you get small doesn't mean that you get the benefit of a single source of truth. This isn't a problem that is solved by one
Mhm.
single thing. It's something that is solved by a proactive approach to implementing software.
Absolutely. And I mean, single source of truth has many different levels, right? I think that strategically, you need to understand what that is, and that's part of the exercise of understanding where you're going, right?
Mhm.
Which kind of brings me to this question from Avery. What's a good framework for assessing whether it's the tool that's broken or just the way you're using it?
So when you start running into scenarios where IT is telling the business that they are unable to gain the enhancement that they seek, and it's an actual truthful thing, that's actually not possible with what it is we're doing. That's when it's broken, right?
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of different IT departments that say no, not because it can't be done, but because they don't want to do it. And in
Mhm.
my opinion, IT doesn't necessarily get to make that decision.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's not about what you. If you're in the business of telling customers what work you want to do for them and what work you don't want to do for them, I can promise you, you're going to lose a lot of customers and your business is going to suffer. Right.
Mhm.
So let's take the service-based mentality. How do we solve that problem? Let's start with the yes, we can, rather than that's not possible, or
Mhm.
that's not fun, or that's not easy, and let's lean into it. Uh,
Mhm.
so if you have a great relationship between the business and IT, this is an easy answer
Mhm.
because you've been working with the software, been getting more out of it, and then you go and you ask a question, which is, okay, um, we need to, we're going to go into Europe, and all of a sudden we have a VAT tax requirement that we didn't anticipate, and we got to solve this problem. And IT says, yeah, I can build that. It's different for every single country in Europe, and it's different for every single country that we're in. We've never done this before, and it's something that's going to change possibly annually. So sure, let's lean into this. And then they say this is how much it's going to take to do that, and then you find, all right, oh, that's a lot of work and a lot to maintain it. Now we've started with a yes, I have an answer, but is that the right answer? Is that a good answer? And typically, building your own VAT tax program is not the right answer, right? So you can go buy one and implement that. And then you have solved for the can we do this?
Mhm.
Yes, we can. Is that the
Mhm.
right approach? No, it's not. Um, Very seldom is a software program actually truly broken and incapable of being upgraded. Uh,
Absolutely.
it happens, but it's not usually a wholesale thing either. It's not usually we can't upgrade any of it. We can't add value in any of it. We have a certain painful area, and
Mhm.
that's worth narrowing in on.
Absolutely. That was a fantastic answer. 10 out of 10, no notes on that one. So let's do one here from Avery. I always love these types of ones. How can leadership teams set their organization up to evolve with their software rather than being held hostage by it?
But I would love to capitalize that at the end there, because that's a part of it, right? You set up your organization to evolve with your software by setting up a team that's able to help that software evolve with you, right? So that's I would change that mindset. As you evolve, your software should be able to evolve with you, and your IT department should be able to help enable that, because your business is going to evolve. It's just
Mhm,
a fact of life. So, how do you set up an organization that does that? You set up that service-based mentality between IT and the business, and you create an organization that allows for the IT department to listen to the
mhm,
business, what it
mhm,
is they're looking for, where it is they want to evolve. IT may come with some great ideas on, we could really revolutionize our accounts payable process. And the business may say, I don't care.
yeah.
It doesn't matter to me is that I can pay my providers more quickly. We're
Mhm,
paying them on time as it is, and
yeah,
we're
we're
fine.
good.
But what I would like to do is increase throughput and decrease the amount of inventory that I'm holding, because
Mhm,
that costs money.
mhm,
And them being able to say, how do you help with that? And then IT in that scenario said, all right, cool. We came to you with an idea. We don't want to squash creativity and innovation.
mhm,
And so let me understand why it is you want to do this, how it is you want to do this, what are the areas that you think are causing us to carry more inventory, and let's come up with a solution. And
mhm,
that solution may not even end up being IT based. It may be, you know what, we're going to implement a Kanban replenishment program, and we're going to go that route. And then IT says, okay, great idea. You adopted a new process. I need to learn that process now. And now you have an IT department that is evolving with your business rather than the other way around.
absolutely. And that brings me to this question. It's a long one, so I'm going to just kind of summarize it. I love the would you rathers. But would you rather implement a monolithic ERP that locks you into a rigid system and requires things like deep integration across finance, supply chain, HR, all of those? Or would you rather go modular with best of breed apps that keep you agile but require that constant governance?
Um, it depends. The thought process on that is what type of needs do I have, right?
Exactly.
Am I falling apart all over the place? Um, Maybe that means that I need to look at a more
Yeah.
holistic, monolithic path. But if I'm not, and I've been maintaining things here and then
Mhm,
there, I just have one area to clean up or two areas to
mhm,
clean up. I like a more integrated approach. Uh,
mhm.
if I'm already doing that, I probably have pretty good governance as it is.
Yeah.
So, but you can always check those types of things and check those assumptions.
Absolutely, and I think it really does depend on what you're trying to do. Like, I think of, like, a high growth organization that you're trying to, maybe you're a startup and you're scaling from 1 to 50 million in a year. That's a lot, and you might not know how to do certain things. ERP system at that level of a business might be a great choice for you because it will help you kind of standardize different processes, make sure that you're, effective in all the different areas in which you might not have software. There's lots of gaps there for startups. And we're not talking about, an SAP type system. We're talking more of those tier 2, tier 3 vendors that a lot of times are great ERP partners, great innovation and AI partners because they're not the level at which, they are the king of all big software.
Yeah,
And so there's something to be said for those tier 2 vendors that really do. We see it every day. They show up and really do well by our clients. That's why, we have a motto of not being biased, but Adam always says we actually are very biased to the people that are going to treat our clients effectively and have good choices. That's a level of biases that we feel comfortable
yeah.
carrying with integrity.
Well, it's like why wouldn't you be biased against a bad decision? Right. It's like it's at the end of the day, it's not about saying we have favorite software packages because they give us money or anything. We have favorites,
Yeah.
software packages, favorite system integrators, favorite approaches because they work. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think that that's important. In the spirit of that, we have a question: what sets Boomi and MuleSoft apart? I think this is a really, really good question. Um, and I'm not going to go into like a comparison all the way through, but what I think is important about this is that the approaches that these two software packages take. Um, Boomi is a much more low code environment for a middleware approach. It is designed for folks that are more the enable more people to do more with the middleware itself, and requires less technical acumen to implement well. And that's not a bad thing. Some organizations need something that is a bit less complicated. MuleSoft is far better for highly complex organizations that also have a significant skill set in writing code, right? And I'm talking about specifically writing lines of code and coding and creating software. MuleSoft is far better for that technical skill set
Mhm.
because it allows those coders to do more complicated and intricate things with their APIs rather than the drag and drop style onto a canvas from a booming perspective. Neither is wrong. It's just a matter of competencies and skill sets for your IT
Mhm.
organization and what it is you need to be able to do. So I think it's worth addressing that question because it's a
Yeah.
very good one, and there are going to be middleware type programs that fit into either of those buckets. I need
Mhm.
something that's going to be more low code so that I have more
Yeah.
folks that can be able to serve themselves. Or I have an IT department that is highly skilled and technical, and I expect them to be. And so there's software packages that fit into that space. So I think that was a good question to
Yeah.
stick to for a second.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that. That's super helpful. I think we don't talk about middleware enough, and it's something that we need to, as a community, discuss and give some space to, because there's lots of really great innovations that you can potentially do by really owning your system architecture with
Mhm.
these types of middleware
Yeah.
platforms. So that's
Well,
really a good.
there's a lot that goes into that. I've been with IT organizations where middleware is the bottleneck because it
Mhm.
is so highly technical, and we have so many people in other departments of IT that are capable of doing their piece of it and then waiting for the middleware dev team to catch
Mhm.
up. As it gets a little bit off balance. You don't want middleware to become the bottleneck and the reason that you can't do things.
Mhm.
The idea that it's well, we can't do that because we don't have the capacity in one team, but we do have it in six others. I don't know that that's not indicative of a different type of problem, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to this one. I think this is a good one to kind of talk through because it's certainly a hot topic in the industry. AI moves at the speed of iteration, but legacy ERP moves at the speed of multi-year contracts. How do you balance the two?
That's how do you balance the difference between paying the mortgage and buying groceries on a weekly basis, right? You think you treat them differently. That's the only way to do it. You got to just know that ERP is going to be what it is, and it's going to be something that becomes hopefully more of a fixed expense and not variable. And then AI can become more of a variable expense until it stabilizes for how it is you're going to use it. So, um, understanding where they're different and why they're different, I think, is the key on that, so that you know that you're using them more effectively.
Mhm. That's a great answer. And knowing the difference between the two and how that works, I think that's the biggest thing that we have a misunderstanding around AI and what it can and cannot do for your organization, right? And those integration points, understanding what the risks are with those and what, the overall goal and reward is critical as well. So let's see. There's so many good ones in here. It's hard to choose. Let's see. This is a good one. Why do so many organizations underestimate the cultural and change management side of ERP?
Because I think it's just going to get done. It's just
Mhm.
going to happen, and that's not really fair to people. It's a bad assumption to make. I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy this software, and it starts to get into a misunderstanding of what an ERP implementation is, right?
Yeah.
Um, there are, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cultural change. You can blend your culture with it, and you should consider how it is you do that more actively. But I think that the change management side and thinking that we're just going to plug it in and it's going to work. The same way I'm going to buy an adapter for my new computer and plug in my monitor and it's going to
Mhm.
work. Uh, just isn't the case. It's something that needs to be built, and there are going to be decisions that need to get made on what can be built, where and when and how, that are going to change the way your business functions. If you're not eyes wide open on that, then you're going to have problems. And your change management isn't going to be any
Mhm.
fun. And you're going to go live, and then you're going to get less out of your system because you didn't pay attention to where the changes are happening and what it is they're going to look like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is another great just understanding of why you might take a more agile or bite sized department, business unit by business unit
Yeah.
approach. A big change management and cultural project. Most of our ERP failures that we see are due to this underestimating of what it will be on the cultural side, whether it be user adoption, change management, whatever you want to call it. But understanding that on a more micro level by doing a project in a specific department before you scale it, it's going to give you and lower that risk so that if it does fail and you made some bad assumptions about your culture, then it gives you that opportunity to scale, change, revisit, as opposed to completely dropping all motivation throughout your entire organization.
Yeah, and I think it's worthy to say that there are approaches in this that are going to be a clean scrape type of thing, and the culture is going to get scraped with it. And there's something to be said about those types of transformations. Um, Private equity firms are going
Mhm.
to come in, and a lot of them really don't care about your company culture. They
Yeah.
really don't care about the change management effort. They are buying a business to rehabilitate it and sell it for more money. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. That
Mm-mm.
happens all of the time. And businesses grow and change because of this cycle. There's a change that happens in that a lot of times, that is, we are going to do this and we are going to make it happen. We're going to cram it in. We're going to cut the fat. And we're going to just get lean on how we do it. And we're going to make it happen by bludgeoning you through it. And that happens sometimes. And it is sometimes effective. Is that the type of implementation that is super fun and exciting? No. Um, can it be effective? Yeah, sure. I've seen it plenty of times. Not every time somebody starts an ERP implementation and doesn't do it in the most fun, exciting, and flashy way means that it's doomed for failure. It just means that you had to be aware of the type of approach that you're taking and be cognizant of it.
Absolutely. And really understand it, right? You have to see it all the way through. And that can be really difficult to do
Mhm.
for many organizations because they don't do an ERP implementation. I mean, their last ERP implementation might have been 30 years ago. So it's very hard to see those gaps. This is not something you do every day, which is why businesses like ours exist, so that you're able to really understand what am I doing here and who needs to be involved. What am
Mhm.
I, really going through, and how do I build it out prescriptive for my organization? Not what the vendor wants me to do,
Mhm.
right? But what is going to be best for me? How, like to your point, the software is going to evolve with my business goals, not my business's goals have to evolve with the software.
When
So,
it's in that same scenario with the private equity company that comes in, a lot of times they come in and they think to themselves, "I'm going to replace the ERP and then I'm going to flip this." So it's like remodeling, buying a home, remodeling the kitchen, and reselling it for a higher value. That's fine. But a lot of them understand that an ERP implementation is not desirable.
yeah.
It is not something that's fun. It's not something that often has a guarantee of success. And
Mhm.
so there's a risk in that. There are
Mhm.
plenty of private equity companies that come in and say, We're going to rehabilitate the business so that we can reorganize things and get things operating more effectively and more efficiently and use the tools that we have to do that. And then we'll flip it. That's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. And there are plenty of times that happens as well. So I'm not here to say that private equity firms, the bad guys that come in and they rip and
Oh,
replace and they crush your culture and they make everybody miserable. It's just one of the different ways that people get these types of projects done. That's
yeah,
all.
for sure. And private equity, it has many different functions. So, it completely depends on what the acquisition looks like, what, the overall portfolio looks like. Anyway,
I
so
love
let's
this. So we're just going to plug it in and manifest results. Like, you test that thought process. You let you.
yeah,
I'll
she's
make a deal. You do your manifestation of results, and I will take my hard work ethic and approach to it, and we'll see. We'll see which bucket fills faster.
yeah, I say that all the time on my TikToks. People are always shocked to know Adam doesn't have any idea what is on TikTok. So he has no idea, like, with these types of different allusions to those types of things. He's not a TikToker. Should be, I always say. But let's do this one real quick. I lost it. Hold on. It was right here. One of the barriers is psychological. Leaders think we already spent all this money. We have to stick it out. How do you help executives kind of reframe that sunk cost mindset, or that their project, yeah, I mean, you could work on it for the next 20 years if you want to, but it's
Yeah.
still not going to work.
Yeah, and there is something to be said for, look, we started this, we should finish it, right? There is something to be said for that. But at some point, you have to realize if you're the one that is past the inflection point. We already spent 5 years on this, and we've been doing this for 5 years. We have spent as much implementing the sales program as we expected to spend implementing our entire ERP, and we are live on nothing. Okay. The sunk cost mindset on that is now causing you problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how close are we to the finish line? And is that realistic, right? Or are we as close as we think we are? Because that's the scenario that I ran into recently, which was we're almost done. We need
Mm-hmm.
one more month. I kid you not, we needed one more month, November of last year. And then we needed one more month in January. And then we needed one more month in February. And this, all right, now we have a trend, right? And then so getting past that sunk cost mindset is something that you have to be eyes wide open on it and realizing are do we have a different problem than sunk cost?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because that sunk cost can certainly grow and you could still be left with nothing. And so sometimes pulling the plug and giving up on an arduous and valiant effort. The folks that worked on that project, they really tried, they worked
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it just wasn't to be. It was the wrong software, it was the wrong fit, it was the wrong approach. There were a lot of things wrong with it, and it just didn't get there.
So, how do you feel like vendors are going to handle this shift from the end of big software, quote unquote? And how do we as consumers kind of navigate their trickiness in the marketplace on what kind of they will be the next dog and pony show of what they're trying to sell you in order to remain relevant?
Well, they'll continue to build, right? They'll continue to buy those one-off systems and fold them into their software package. They'll continue to grow by acquisition and all those other things to plug holes to continue to create this castle of theirs that is ERP, and that goes on in every industry, right? Consolidation, fragmentation, and consolidation is just a business cycle in general, but you have to remember that they can serve the needs of some. They don't serve the needs of all. And hearing them when they say, well, not hearing them because they're going to tell you that they serve all your needs every day, all day, but hearing what it is you need and then applying it towards that. And I think that the greatest example of this is more of the right sizing your IT approach, which
Uh-huh.
is if I think I need new ERP, I have one area of my business that is wildly complex. Let's say I have a fully automated warehouse. Let's go back to this ERP plus warehouse management solution, where I am a distributor and my warehouse is highly automated. I need a lot of functionality in the warehouse, but the rest of my business is pretty simple, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that I can buy a small software package with a couple add-ons to it and then get a larger warehouse management system, do more advanced warehouse management, and more advanced module of types, and go that approach. Or you could buy a bigger ERP and you could overpay for 9 other modules because you needed one very specific one. And
Yes.
um, that's the more interesting approach to me, which is how do I respect the complexity of my business where it lives, as opposed to letting the one location the complexity in my business lives be the tail that wags the dog on cost for everywhere else. And that's something that I think a lot of organizations need to be able to look at more carefully, so
Hmm.
that they know who they are. And then that
Yeah.
way they can be more effective in solving their problems. Um,
Hmm.
I'm an industrial manufacturer and I need an operational system that serves some very specific, highly complicated industrial needs. But my finance is easy. My purchasing is easy. I have one raw material. Cool. Let's not overpay for those. Let's get what we can out of that and let's focus on where we need to spend money.
Absolutely. Sorry, my chat here is frozen on the side, so I can't get to the last questions here. But let's see. Um, let's end on one here that
I got something to end on.
okay, great, because my
The
screen is
biggest, the biggest of the big box ERPs out there, SAP. If you're on SAP, you better get off of it and migrate onto S4 HANA, or your entire life is over as you know it. No, it's not though, right?
yeah,
Like this,
oh, of course not.
it's not.
Yeah.
This is an old story. That is it is indicative of the same mindset that big box ERP is more important than it is.
Hmm.
I promise you, a third party industry is already popping up around
Yeah.
supporting SAP ECC6 for those who don't want to migrate or can't,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
at some point, you have to ask yourself, is it a bigger risk to go from my highly customized ECC6 platform to S4 HANA, which
Hmm.
is not going to allow that level of customization and is a significant amount of change? Is it a bigger risk to move from those ECC6 to S4 HANA than it is to stay on the system that I have and have a third party that can help me with it?
Hmm.
On my IT department for a little bit longer, who is it's SAP, right? We have an SAP IT department who is skilled in this.
Hmm.
So that's something that is it goes back to the why do we need this?
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be because of an external
Hmm.
decision maker saying, "Well, I'm threatening you," basically. I call BS on that. That's for sure. So maybe that threat fits with something that you wanted to do anyway. I want to get upgraded, and I want to do this, and I have the funds to do it. Blah 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 blah. And I'm ready for it. I've been preparing for it for ages. That's fine. But the idea that somebody would coerce you into changing software packages because it makes them more money. That's not fair. And then after they've gotten you sufficiently afraid, but you're to move onto anything else other than S4 HANA, sufficiently afraid that you can't stay on what you have, even though you probably can, then they're going to roll out the trap,
Mm-hmm.
the Rise platform.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. We'll give you another couple of
Yeah,
years. Just get
it's
onto the
okay.
Rise platform. That'll be super easy. And you know
Yeah.
what it is it's taking a significant cost, pulling it up so that they can get more money out of you and put you on something that makes you subscription based. And then now you're truly trapped because you
Yeah.
are on an SAP system and subscription that they're
Yeah.
getting their monthly cut on now, and you are now pot committed because you started that conversation, you started that transformation, and that's not to your benefit; it's to theirs. And
Mm-hmm.
just this big box ERP trying to Frankenstein itself into dragging you into their challenges. And I think that's not to say SAP S/4HANA isn't a great system, but if you're on ECC 6, you can do a whole lot more with what you have than
Mm-hmm.
you're being led to believe,
Oh
and
yeah.
there are a lot more options out there for getting more out of it over time than you're being led to believe. And those options give you more opportunities to maybe transition to something else that is developed since you implemented SAP so long ago.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, they caused their own problem in the marketplace and then launched a product to solve it, right? They
Right?
constantly do that in ways to make more money. But I think the thesis here is, the end of this kind of organized crime type of business model. And that's one of the pieces that businesses need to be very aware of when they go through these types of conversations and contracts, is that you do have a choice in how you manage your internal IT department, how you manage your external software platforms, how you subscribe to whatever you're going to look at. It's about making your business better, not somebody else's. And
You
that's what we want.
always have a choice.
Yeah.
Whenever something like, and this is for those of you out here that maybe aren't listening for technical reasons. Um, every single time somebody in your life tries to convince you that you have no other options, you have more options. I can promise you that. You every single time somebody tells you that this is the only option, there's always at least one more. Probably dozens at that
Yeah.
point. 'Cause there are so many more options that they don't want you to believe that there's something else out there. Because if you find out that there's more to this and that you have other options, they are all of a sudden going to become the option that you don't choose.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that motivational speech. Thank you for inspiring us on a Friday morning here. So, thank you to all of these great questions. Just a reminder, if you do pop questions or you're watching this in the replay format, we always go back in and re-answer those and provide resources. If you do have questions about kind of what you should be doing or your current relationship with your vendor that you're kind of reevaluating or starting to see the writing on the wall there, definitely let us know. We're always happy to kind of just take a look under the hood and give you an idea of kind of what your options are in those types of scenarios. But this has been an awesome conversation. Definitely want to hear from additional audience members about kind of what you're seeing in the marketplace too. It's definitely a big transition at this point to what system architecture looks like traditionally. So
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you, Adam, for your time. Thank you for all of these great comments, and we will see you next week.
From Toronto.
Yes. Yes. So I think we're frozen in the live, just so everybody's aware of like why we're freezing here. So I'm going to turn off my computer, but I'm going to call IT, which is Adam.
I'm going to ask you to restart your computer. Thanks, everybody.